Hey everybody, it's Rebecca Johnson here, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I specialize in narcissistic abuse recovery. If you've been hanging out in here with me, you have seen all of the videos I have been posting on narcissistic parents, and today is probably one of the most important ones when it comes to that relationship with your parent, and that is boundaries. So today I'm going to define what boundaries are. I am going to share with you why I think if you're an adult child of a narcissistic parent, why boundaries are probably really difficult for you, as well as why they're probably really foreign to you. And at the end of the video, if you could just hang in there with me till the end, I'm going to give some how-tos to establish boundaries with your parent. Kicking it right off, right? So definition of a boundary is, according to Dr. Cloud and Dr. Townsend in their boundaries book, they define boundaries as a distinct place where your responsibility ends and another person's responsibility begins. Distinct place, me, you, okay? A boundary also conveys expectations within a relationship, and it communicates what's acceptable and unacceptable within the context of the relationship. A boundary also keeps you from doing things for someone else they should be doing for themselves. It is a safeguard, and boundaries are limits to a relationship. So why are boundaries foreign to you as an adult child of a narcissist? Well, there's a few reasons I think that they could be foreign, and that's because unhealthy individuals don't like boundaries. So if you have a narcissistic parent, obviously they are not a healthy individual. They do not like limits or expectations put on them, and they will fight against that. They will bulldoze others. So growing up in that home, you may have witnessed your parent bulldozing others' boundaries or speaking really poorly or negatively of someone that is trying to establish boundaries with them. As I mentioned in a previous video, boundaries were never modeled for you by a narcissistic parent, again, because they didn't have them, right? They do not want them. They do not want to be in a relationship that does have boundaries. So those are just a few reasons of why boundaries may be foreign to you. And I hear that often in my counseling practice when I have somebody in my office or even virtually that says, I have no clue how to even begin setting boundaries with my parent or within my friendships or a romantic relationship. It really doesn't surprise me if they have a narcissistic parent. Again, those things haven't been taught, and you're all of a sudden a grown-up trying to figure out how to navigate things in a healthy way. So here's your opportunity now to start setting those boundaries. So I also want to chat for a second about why boundaries may be difficult. I think the first thing probably comes from a feeling of guilt. Your parent has projected guilt onto you. They want you to feel bad for trying to establish a boundary with them or setting a limit on them. So that guilt can really be a heavy anchor that you're dealing with within your relationship with your parent. Another reason why boundaries have been difficult for you is that your parent has always wanted to control you. If you have boundaries, if you've established boundaries and set limits within your relationship with them, they will really struggle to control you. So they're going to push back and they're going to try to run those boundaries over at every chance they get. So that makes it really conflictual as the child in the relationship. You don't want them to create a conflict. You don't want to have a conflict with them within your relationship. Other reasons could be different beliefs that are connected to boundaries, meaning you are the one trying to control others if you set limits. You are disrespectful if you try to set limits. You are not honoring your parents if you're trying to set limits. Maybe it's the belief that boundaries are selfish. Maybe it's the belief that boundaries are unkind. It could even go so far as that maybe a parent has said to you, in other words, right, if you've set a boundary with me, then that means you don't love me. So that can be really difficult to fight against internally as an adult child of a narcissist. I would guess as well that you probably have a lot of fears surrounding boundaries. One being that you don't want to hurt other people's feelings. So there's a fear there of having others be upset with you. It could also be a fear of being punished or raged against if you have a conversation about what's okay and what's not okay. You may be afraid of abandonment. You may be afraid of being shamed by that parent. You may also have an embedded belief from your upbringing that you're not enough or that there's something wrong with you. So the idea of drawing lines within a relationship can be really difficult. There might also be a fear of just being your own individual. Maybe you have an enmeshed relationship with one of your parents. So the thought of really breaking free from that entanglement and being your own individual and having that surrounded by your own boundaries, that may be really scary. So all of those fears are absolutely understandable given the context in which you've grown up. So why exactly are boundaries necessary? Well, boundaries are a part of every healthy relationship, a really healthy part of your own self-esteem and self-worth. A boundary will create this emotional distance that is really crucial for your recovery. So I want you to hear that again. That boundary will create the emotional distance and sometimes physical distance if necessary to your own recovery. Boundaries are also necessary because they will help you develop your own sense of self-worth. They will help you further develop your sense of self-esteem. So there is this balanced life model that I use often with my clients. And what it shows is all the different areas of your life, right? So your growth, your family, your friends, fun and entertainment, even your own spirituality, your own relationships, your own physical and mental health. So there's this pie chart, right? It's going to be right up here. But this is a really good tool to sit with for a minute and really think about your relationship with your parent and evaluate where their involvement in your life, where this falls on this scale. So as you can see on this wheel, it goes from 1 to 10. So if you're sitting here really looking at this and saying, wow, I feel like my parent is involved in all of my finances, right? Then maybe you would rate that at a 10. So I want you to really take note of this wheel and see exactly where your parent, your relationship with your parent falls into each one of these categories. I think anything that comes at a 5 or lower can be said to be healthy. I think another way that you can use this wheel is if those areas, maybe your parent is not involved in your finances at all, but maybe they really push themselves into your family, into your friendships. Maybe that's at a 10. So that would definitely be an area of your life where you would want to set boundaries with them. So again, this is just a gauge. Look at each one of these areas of your life in context of your relationship with your parent. If that is a 5, if that is over a 5, those are the areas that you want to really begin to start thinking through what boundaries could look like. So now we're going to jump into some of the how-tos of setting boundaries, and this can be really helpful in any relationship, not just a relationship with your parent. So it's first to determine who do you need to set the boundary with. Is that your mother? Is that your father? Is that your spouse? Is that a coworker? Next question is, when is the boundary needed? Is it needed when you're feeling disrespected by this person, when you're feeling abused, when you're feeling bullied by them? Thirdly is, why do you want to set this boundary? Maybe it's because you need to create some space. Maybe it's because you need to create a safeguard in your own identity and what you need and what you want. Fourth thing is, what is the boundary? So for instance, it could look something like, I'm sorry, but I'm unable to fit that into my schedule. Maybe it's formed in a question of, can you please clarify what you mean by what you just said? Maybe it could be, I'm not comfortable with that right now. So those are just a couple examples of statements that you can make or questions you can ask. So for instance, maybe your mom insists on talking about your love life in public or around people that it just doesn't feel comfortable for you. You don't want them knowing your personal business. Maybe what you could say to them is, Mom, my relationship with my husband is private. I'm not comfortable with you talking about my marriage with the rest of the family. This is no longer acceptable. So real quick, let me break that down. Mom is the who. The when is when my privacy isn't being respected. The why is I'm not comfortable with that. And the what is this is no longer acceptable. So I hope that that part makes sense. Another example could be your father shows up at your home uninvited and at random times. So maybe a response to that could be, Dad, this is the who. My time at home is precious when I'm feeling overwhelmed, and I need to protect my time with my family. That's the why. From now on, please call in advance to see if it's a good time for you to come over. That's the what. That's the boundary. So, Dad, who, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, is the when. I need to protect time with my family is the why. And call in advance is the what. Other examples when it comes to maybe passive aggressive comments. An example could be, Mom, it sounds like you're making judgments about my career. Can you clarify what you mean? Another example, your comments are hurtful. I'm choosing to end this conversation now. And that's something that you should never feel bad about, is to say, this isn't going well. You're being argumentative with me, or I'm feeling attacked, so I'm going to hang up the phone. That's a very distinct boundary, and it's completely okay. Maybe it's a situation where one parent's always talking negatively about the other parent. So an appropriate boundary for that could be, I feel uncomfortable when you talk about my father or my mother. Please confide in someone else. Meaning, I'm not going to be your emotional support system in this. That is not my role as your child. Another boundary could be, when I talk about how I feel, please don't shut me down. I'm not going to argue with you about this. When you are ready to talk amicably, please call me. Period. Short and to the point. As you probably already know, they're not going to like you establishing boundaries with them. So be ready for that. Be ready for whatever punishment might come your way. You cannot control them, but what you can do is make the choice to do this the healthiest way that you can for you. So I hope you found all this information helpful today about boundaries. I really look forward to talking more about this area. Maybe next time I can speak more to when you get that resistance, when you get that pushback from your parent. So thanks so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, if you haven't chimed in with some of the comments, I would love for you to do that. Thank you.